I have a bit of a tank problem. This is my filament tank collection. If you've been following 3D printing for any period of time, you'll be familiar with the idea of maker coins, that being little coins that you print to test filament samples. When I started out with 3D printing, I wanted to do similar, but didn't want to spend the design time coming up with my own coin. So I was searching around for various models I could use for this purpose and came across this little tank from one of my favourite video games, that being Supreme Commander. It's specifically Cybran's T2 Rhino Tank. If you're interested in printing this, I'll have the link down below to where you can find the files for it. It comes as a single STL with the 4 separate parts that make up the tank. Here is the tank up close. You see it's made of 4 parts, so if I take it apart, see you've got one track piece, another track piece, and then you've got the turret, which you see rotates. And it all prints as a single object. This needs support material, and so does that in the cavity. But then, yeah, you put it together. You see there's these lugs here. And there you go. And you can see already, one of the reasons that attracted me to this model is that because it's these separate parts, it lets you mix and match the different parts or the different colours in my case, to see what styles will work when I'm coming up with my various designs. As you can see, I've accumulated a lot of these tanks over the past year from various samples. The majority of them are from Rigid Ink Club, so they're once a month sample subscription service. But also some of the more interesting ones I've received from the recent TCT show, such as this Vertigo Starlight. It's a really lovely colour that I'll want to find a use for at some point. But what you can see here is they're all on display and a bit of a mess. So I've wanted to organise them in some way. So I thought about designing a rack. And that means going over to Fusion 360 to model something up. So let me show you what I've come up with. This is the rack design that I came up with. As you can see, I've gone for a 5x5 design with a slight incline on the vertical. The rack itself consists of 3 main parts, the first being the main rack backing, which has the grid of mounting points, in this case using a dovetail joint on the front, and then on the rear just a little slot for the legs. And the legs themselves are just a simple piece that slots into the back. Then there's the holder itself for the tanks. Now the tanks themselves don't actually have a mounting point that's easy to use, so for this rack I've made it so that the tanks are slot in between using their tracks. So that's what this piece is for. This is about 2mm wide and just goes between the tracks with these cutouts conforming to the shape. Now this shape was done through a bit of trial and error, but works quite well. And then here's the dovetail joint that I mentioned. Now this piece does need a little bit of support, or at least I've tried printing it with support, but it could also be bridged if you were so inclined. So yeah, this is the overall design. I did consider going for a modular design, but thought that would add an extra complexity. So my plan is to print 2 of these to give me enough capacity for the tanks I've already got, plus a few more for any samples that come along. So let's go over to the printer. After all that printing, here's the end result. You can see it turned out pretty well. Then the tolerances worked out fairly well as well. This is printed in Rigid Ink's natural PLA. I chose this so that it didn't clash with any of the more vibrant colours of the tanks. So right, now let's fill it up, shall we? You see here I'm just placing the tracks around the raised bit that I had in design, and it fits pretty well. And there we go, that's one rack done. Now let's move over and do the next one. And there we have it, two completed filament tank racks with all my tanks mounted. On the left you've got exclusively Rigid Ink filament, and on the right you've got a combination of Rigid Ink and some of those TCT show samples I got. If you're interested in printing this yourself, I've got links to both the tank model and the rack down in the description below. You'll probably see these appear in the back of videos in the future, no doubt. Right, so I hope you enjoyed seeing my little creation process for this rack, and I hope to see you all in the future. Whoops, missed one. There we go.